Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the wizard John Dee, a great magician who lived back in hundreds of years ago, and basically was a magician for royal courts and stuff. We'll be looking at him tonight. But first, while we wait for people to gather in the chat, let me go off and show off some artwork from my own upcoming graphic novel, Scumdogs, as usual. Here's my extreme 90s cover. As I've said before, Scumdogs is a parody book. And I wanted to make this book to bring you back to the comic books of the 90s, the extreme comic books from back then. The Scumdogs, as I said, is a parody book. I parody the cartoons from the 80s and 90s and anything else I want to parody. The Scumdogs themselves, the title characters, they're supervillains out to take over the universe. You see, they used to compete in sporting events, and these sporting events were held in the future. They were held for superhuman beings as the pro athletes. They'd have themselves transformed into monsters or superhumans with powers and stuff like that, and they'd compete in sporting events for money. So they're not exactly the nicest guys because they transform themselves into monsters and stuff like that. Ugly ones, as you can see. But what happens when they get banned from sports? The Scumdogs decide to take over the universe. It's just a simple idea to get them out there and doing stuff. They're led by Deathmug. He's the purple guy with the middle mask over here. He's based on various villains from 80s cartoons. You can see he has a skull face like Skeletor from He-Man. He's also based on other villains from 80s cartoons, notably Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe, the leader of Cobra. He has a metal mask like him too. And you can see him fighting his arch enemy in the Space Forces, Buick Starpoon. He's the guy with the pink pompadour hair over there. Basically, he's a parody of Duke from G.I. Joe, as well as Han Solo and a bunch of Star Trek characters. Because if you notice his uniform, it looks like it's from Star Trek, don't you think? Now, because him and his team are also parodies of space opera kind of characters as well, from Star Trek and stuff. Now, what else to say? Yeah. Now, Buick Starpoon is an arrogant military. While Deathmug is an arrogant dictator who wants to rule the world, Buick Starpoon is one of those overblown military maniacs who never admits he's wrong and is too arrogant to ever ask for any help. So when he basically screws up, he basically makes everything much worse and a complete disaster. And basically, it's going to be hilarious. Now, because of Buick Starpoon and his team, the Wild Rangers, are all G.I. Joe parodies. That means each of them have a military specialty. Like G.I. Joes, if you read on the back of the boxes they came in, each of the Joes would have each of the G.I. Joes would have a military specialty, a special bunch of skills or maybe abilities. They'd each be a supremely powerful soldier or pilot, or maybe they'd be good at information gathering like a spy. You get the idea. Now, because the Wild Rangers are parodies of G.I. Joes, that means they are all morons. This guy over here with the mohawk and the dark blue uniform, his name is Roadhog. His military specialty is that he was part of the United States Army. He's a soldier in the Army. That's his military specialty. Then you have this guy over here. You have this bold guy with a gun over here in a lighter blue uniform. His name is Beach Pounder. His military specialty is that he's a Marine, just another Marine. Then you have this guy back here in the red uniform driving that heavy special vehicle firing off his missiles at the Scumdogs. His name is Blast Tank. Blast Tank here. His military specialty is that he's a heavy vehicle specialist, a tanker. Now, there's a joke because if you compare the fact that the other members of the Wild Rangers are all just soldiers while Blast Tank is actually a tanker, there's a joke in that if you think about it, how they're just soldiers and he's a tanker. Now, this cover is one of 3 different variant covers you can back when my Indiegogo goes live, so look out for that as well. Here we have Girl Friday. She's another member of the Wild Rangers and stuff like that. Now, Girl Friday was basically assigned to be Buick Starpoon's second in command because while the Wild Rangers fight the Scumdogs and save the universe, they're also complete idiots. So they assigned Girl Friday to basically be his second in command to basically babysit him. Well, yeah, and basically make sure he and his team do their jobs right. But the thing is, Girl Friday basically hates them. She's basically a parody on the Girl Friday archetype kind of character. You know how have you ever heard of Girl Fridays? They're basically female soldiers who are basically in love with their male superior officers and follow them around. Well, Girl Friday hates Buick Starpoon. She thinks he's an idiot, and she hates the fact that she was assigned to the Wild Rangers. She pretty much hates where she is. It's going to be fun when you read about her. By the way, folks, hit that. Remember, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics; they're bad for you. Okay, the there is misspelled. It's THERE. Go and subscribe to me. If you want to watch this video again, the stream as soon as it's done, go to my YouTube page and go to past live streams, because YouTube buries my videos. If you go to past live streams, you can get right to my video, or use the link on the pinned tweet on my Twitter page at 777megachris1. It's on the first pinned tweet. As well as, please hit that like button for me, will you, folks? It really helps me fight the algorithm, and more people will see my content and back my graphic novel, which I work on every day. If more people help me fight that algorithm and more people hit that like button. As well as, please hit that bell for notifications, and make sure to hit the part of the bell for notifications that will give you all future notifications. As well as, please share this video out on Twitter and any other sharing site. Here we have Deathmug's henchmen, because you know in all 80s cartoons, the main villain of the cartoon would have henchmen, and they'd be total morons. And, well, they'd be funny as hell. The pink fat guy down here is Sloppy. He's a blob monster. Well, he's a big fat pink guy. Then we have this blue guy with the top hat up here called Murdermouth. These guys are basically a parody of Bebop and Rocksteady, or you can say they're a parody of every henchman from an 80s cartoon. You know, like villains like Bebop and Rocksteady, or Beastman or say the Decepticons like Rumble or Soundwave. You get the idea. Those kinds of characters, and these are them. Now here we have Hair Metal Doctor. Hair Metal Doctor is another member of the Scumdogs. As you can see, he's human, so he's not a superhumanly powerful monster. Deathmug hired him to basically be a mad scientist and create weapons for him. See, he's a parody of a character from G.I. Joe called Dr. Mindbender, a mad scientist. But I made my character also a hair metal musician because I think that's awesome. That's Hair Metal Doctor for you. And here we have Miss Breasty Melons, who, well, maybe I should also show this. Remember I showed this art off on the John Malin show, or rather on the Jack show. John Malin had me on, and I showed you Southern Belle. Now, she might appear in my graphic novel, but I'm more or less having her have her own book and stuff like that. But I wanted to show off my artwork, and, well, if you help me back my books, you're going to get artwork like this and great characters. All right. Here we have Miss, well, let me get this here. Here's Southern Belle again. Here we have Miss Breasty Melons, who's basically a parody of the Baroness from G.I. Joe. But unlike the Baroness, well, the Baroness being one of those sexy femme fatale characters who worked for Cobra from G.I. Joe, Miss Breasty Melons is basically a party girl from California. She's a valley girl who was rich and famous and was bored and decided to become a villain for fun. And that's Miss Breasty Melons there. Now let me exit out of these, and we'll get right to my stream. 8 minutes in, not too bad. Now, we're going to be talking about John Dee tonight, but first, before we do that, let's look at some Indiegogo's. Here we have Creepsters. Creepsters, an 86-page horror comic book. Max must save his sister when the sinister Creepsters wreak havoc on the small town of Perdita Cove. It's made $7,855, and it's got 20 days left. Creepsters. While digging for buried treasure in Perdita Cove Beach, 12-year-old Max discovers a mysterious creature he names Chomper, whose friendship will lead him into a world of danger, adventure, and heroism. When Chomper's siblings wreak havoc on Max's seaside town, only Max and his new friend can save his sister, Emma, in the town, combining forces to fight the sinister creepsters that wash up on the beach after an alien object splashes down into the ocean offshore. Creepsters is a loving tribute to 1980s high-concept, low-budget comedy horror, a fast-paced story filled with romance, gore, fantasy, and a touch of science fiction. This is a blood-soaked adventure which ultimately proves that family and friendship will overcome everything. Looks pretty good. You can back this book for, well, $25. You can get a digital copy for it for $10, but I'd go for the hardback, physical copy of the book. Okay, not hardback. Well, maybe it is hardback. The physical copy of Creepsters for $25. You have also several different covers. You can also back for the Chomper plushie as well. Introducing Chomper, the very first Comicsgate plush toy, and it looks pretty good as well. See, not bad. You get that. So I guess you can't just get the plush toy, can you? Creepsters, one of everything, 110 estimated shipping like that. Yeah, but you can also get this perk up here. Chomper, one of everything, early bird, $100. All the books signed plus the toy. And you have U.S. shipping. Creepsters 1, Chomper toy, Tales of the Creepsters 1, Creepsters 1 Mad variant, Creepsters 1 Mystery variant. October 2022. Not bad. Not bad. All right. Looks good. That's Creepsters. It looks like a good-looking book. Let's look at this trailer now.
Hello, everybody. This is Soy Rage, and welcome to my campaign, Creepsters. While digging for buried treasure on Perdita Cove Beach, a 12-year-old Max discovers a mysterious creature named Chomper, whose friends will lead him to a world of danger, adventure, and heroism. When Chomper's siblings wreak havoc in Max's seaside town, only Max and his new friend can save his sister Emma and the town by combining forces to fight the sinister Creepsters that watch up on the beach after an alien object splashes down on the ocean offshore. Creepsters is a loving tribute to the 1980s high concept, low budget comedy horror. A fast-paced story filled with romance, gore, fantasy, and a touch of science fiction that is a blood-soaked adventure which ultimately proves that family and friendship can overcome any obstacle. And be sure to order today on Indiegogo. Back Creepsters, coming to a town near you.
Looks good, doesn't it, folks? That's Creepsters. Go back. It's up on Indiegogo. Let's go down here and look at some of the artwork for this book. The artwork in this book looks pretty good, don't you think? Oh, look at that. Yeah, I like it. Ooh. Sort of basically a monster version of, well, okay, it's a more bloody version of Pokemon. All right, not bad. I like it. Aliens and stuff like that. Oh, look at that artwork. Here's some of the characters as well. Here's the Meet Chomper, Comics Week #1 toy manufacturer, Super Asia Fun Toy, Super Asia. Produced limited edition Chomper plush toy. Highest quality collectible, and one of their gone. This design will be retired. Here's Chomper. It looks good. Yeah, I like this artwork. Trading cards. Yeah, here's some of these trading cards. They also look good. Let me go down here. Here's Chomper. Meet the Creepsters. 6 inches. We have Fangs, who's about 6 inches too. I guess that looks bigger. Spot. Okay, Spot. Bruiser. Oh, I guess it's bigger than 6 inches. Maybe. Bruiser here. Fish stick. Whiskers. Not bad. Looks pretty good. Let's go over here and look at some more of this stuff. Well, let me do this. All right. Over here, let's go and look at some more. Here's Mike Barron's Thin Blue Line. Let's make sure to look at this as well, folks. This book is from Mike Barron and his co-creators. The story in the middle of the story of this book. In the middle of a long hot summer, a cop shoots a suspect, and the incident makes the national news. Cities across the country quickly erupt into violence, and well-organized activist groups mix in with opportunists and provocators, and they cause mix in with opportunists, and basically basically it erupts into chaos. This is a 56 full-color book. Thin Blue Line follows police officer Valerie Baca and her partner Bob Mack on their detail guarding the mayor. Turns into a fight for survival. Survivable. Mobs burn down the city hall, forcing the officers to improvise and on the run, relying on their training and wits as the mayor basically tries and to placate the riots prove fruitless. All right. Thin Blue Line is a gripping, entertaining story that offers an unblinking look at a human fallibility on every level. Readers will follow the harrowing journey of two law enforcement officers who must fight for their community and their own survival in a world gone mad. Mainstream comics publishers haven't featured cops as the central heroes in decades, but a few older readers may be familiar with DC Comics' last experiment with a police protagonist from way back in 1975 with police officer Lisa Warner in a title called Lady Cop from DC's first issue. From 1975. The title was never picked up for a series, and the character wouldn't appear in DC Comics again for over 30 years. Lady Cop. Looks pretty good. Thin Blue Line follows Officer Val Back, and she protects her community in Hagen, Illinois, while also trying to raise her little girl as a single mother. What follows is a sampling of some of the interior pages from Thin Blue Line. All of the pages for the book are already completely penciled and inked. So far, for a few, a few are fully colored. Only the remaining colors and letters are left to complete the book and send it to the printer. Look at that. Yeah, it looks like a good-looking book. Good. This book comes from Mike Barron and Joe Arnold, who's a cop, and Jeff Simmons, the colorist. Let's look at this trailer. Before we do that, you can back this book for $25. And it looks good. You can get Officer Assist, whole package, $120. Officer Assist will join our SWAT team and serve with the following 2 copies of the book, one for sharing for the digital version, autographs of the creative team, your name printed in the book's persons of interest page, the limited edition sticker set, a commemorative challenge coin, certificate of your contribution, and unlocking swag. Not bad. Let's look at this trailer now, as I said.
Beginning with issue number 1, Mike Barron wrote Marvel's The Punisher for over 5 years, approaching it as a straight crime comic, without any superheroes, aliens, or robots. Over the course of 60 issues, Barron elevated the gritty anti-hero into one of the most popular and enduring characters in the Marvel Comics universe.
Now he's doing a Thin Blue Line, and it looks pretty good. I'm going to hurry this up a bit.
Their own survival in a world gone mad. Eisner winner Mike Barron has created an alarming tale that unflinchingly examines human fallibility on every level. Along with penciler Joe Arnold, himself a full-time police officer, and talented inker Jeff Slemons, they've created a moving and entertaining story ripped straight from today's headlines.
All right, you get the idea. I want to get in my video here, folks. Sorry about cutting this video off, but hey, we're 18 minutes in, and I haven't still done it yet. Let's look at this. John Dee, basically a wizard. John Dee, the all-time master of magic, creator along with Edward Kelly, Enochian magic. And we also have a single-handedly created modern world. Why John Dee is one of the most important and overlooked figures in history. The following article is an excerpt from the Ultra Culture original dossier, The Angelic Reformation, John Dee, Enochian Magic, and the Occult Roots of Empire. The ebook, which is only $2.99, King Unlimited, follows his life and like that. John Dee, 1527, 1608, or 9. Queen Elizabeth's first court astrologer is a footnote in English history. Remembered, an embarrassing relic of pre-Enlightenment science. He's remembered basically being an embarrassing relic of pre-Enlightenment science, a man deluded into thinking he had learned the language of angels. Thanks to an academic renaissance in Dee studies, however, a very different portrait has emerged of Elizabeth's confidant underneath centuries of attacks initiated with the fundamentalists who took power after Elizabeth, may be one of the greatest geniuses in European intellectual history, a man responsible, it seems, for the modern world, for our world itself. Well, yeah, for the modern world. Like the black mirrors through which John Dee sought to view the spirit's realm, G himself is a lens through which to view the critical transition point of European intellectual history. Between magic and science, he straddled these two apparently divergent disciplines, seeing them as a unified quest to understand nature and God. John Dee was both deeply in line with the Hermetic tradition, and it's pretty good. Let me go back over here for a moment. Just want to check something out. And also, it's greatest. He's basically its greatest, person in it. Alchemy, astrology, Kabbalah, Hermetism, thriving field of angel contact, once thriving field of angel contact, officially relegated to the position of pseudosciences or embarrassing mistakes of European thought by the scientific revolution that came after John Dee, a revolution that, according to the historian Francis Yates, Dee had a direct influence on initiating. Consequently, these areas of intellectual inquiry have been divorced from the Western intellectual project, surviving, if at all, in a fragmentary sideline culture where they serve more as signifiers of rebellion to modernity, to local religion, to the dominant cultural narrative of technological and hyper-capitalist progress. Not bad there. Rather than, for the hyper-capitalist progress, rather than any kind of systematic scientific pursuit, as they were for Dee and his forebears, this means that John Dee remains almost a half a millennium later, the high water mark in the field. The countercultural revivals of pre-scientific occultism, notably for the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley, Tempi Arentis, his Ordo, the Church of Satan. The Church of Satan is a bunch of atheists, and if you know anything about them, they're just atheists. They don't actually believe in any of this stuff. And the Temple of Set, I don't really know about those guys, and have either incorporated or been founded on the backbone of Dee's work, the breadth of originality and intellectual sophistication of which has never been surpassed. John Dee existed in a deeply unique historical period, Elizabeth I occult-tolerant Britain, that allowed the nation's greatest scientists to turn his mind to the study of the other world. At the peak of his career, today this would be comparable to Stephen Hawking to saying that he had made his mark in theoretical physics and would now be fully devoting his time to attempting psychic contact with aliens. This is simply inconceivable. However, it is not without precedent in the modern world. John Nash, 1928-2015, the Nobel Prize-winning American mathematician, economist, who did critical work, Game Theory, and gave us Nash Equilibrium, upon which Ron Howard film A Beautiful Mind was based, believed that he was in communication with aliens who were assisting him with higher math. Nash was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. The brilliant, self-taught Indian mathematician Saranvasha, I'm just going to call him Saranvasha, attributed his achievements in higher mathematics to his family deity, goddess Mahashima. Sorry if I got that wrong. Received visions of scrolls and mathematical equations opening before his eyes. He is quoted as saying, "An equation for me has no meaning unless it represents a thought of God." The quote could have come from Dee himself, while Nash experienced serious mental health and career issues, including institutionalization. The Saranvasha did not. His claim, sorry if I got his name wrong again, his claim of visions was considered perfectly acceptable within the general cultural narrative of Hinduism, which reports of divine inspiration or contact or routine. In a way, Dee was in a similar situation. While not generally well-regarded, magic, scrying, and angel contact were nevertheless widespread in Elizabethan England. Carl Sagan's novel Contact, published in 1985, also deals extensively with the idea of higher intelligences contacting humanity through the languages of advanced math, as we see in the case of Dee, Nash, and Salvin-Nash. The idea was not unique, to Carl here. Similarly, the science of fiction from Philip K. Dick, who, famously recorded his contact experience with an intelligence he called Valis. His final novels also spoke of language, the logos, as a living entity and medium of transmission from higher dimension, the reality punctuating ferocity, the Gnostic Christ of Dick's Icarus and the Old Testament of the angels of Dee and Kelly, or spirit diaries, are not far away from each other in tone and content. Nor are these experiences, whatever their provinces, confined to the margins of society. They are, in fact, woven into the very fabric of our world culture. Many of the mainstream religions have been founded on claims of contact with angels that are far less documented than John Dee's, notably the revelation of John the Prophet Muhammad, with of the Quran from the Archangel Gabriel, a being that also appears in Dee's spirit diaries. Joseph Smith's claims of receiving buried books of golden plates from Angel Moroni, that these divine revelations and claims of supernatural contact exist purely in the realm of subjectivity and faith, have not, of course, impeded their ability to shape world cultures, encompassing, in the case of Revelation and the Quran, billions of individuals. Billions, huh? The Bible, yeah. There's also the practices of Judaism, the parent tradition of the above religions, from a tightly knit and almost impossibly complex system of mathematical interpretation of Scripture, and even, according to some, interpretations of two-way communication, angels making mathematical contact with spiritual entities is an established, if closely guarded religious thing. Such communication with higher intelligences via math, cubalism, and sacred languages, of course, is a running trope in the cult subculture, particularly within groups that draw their inspiration from Dee. The resulting channeled books claimed by Aleister Crowley, Charles Steinfeld, Jack Parsons, Margaret Inglis, Kenneth Grant, and others have become so abundant within a culture that they form both new outsider literary genre and also new complex social and psychological game within occult lineage, within the reception of channeled books, often following explosions from occult groups and or preceding the creation of new groups. Within this underground culture, the reception of channeled documents encapsulates the end of adolescence and parent-child split within the student-teacher relationship. Such channeled books, regardless of their valued provenances, social markers, allowing occult students to split with their symbolic parents, and families, cult orders, and their all right. Their symbolic parents, the ones who taught them, all of this, and families, occult orders, and their metaphors for reality, establish their own metaphor for reality, and thereafter reproduce and start their own families in the form of new occult groups established around the new channeled documents. This was clearly a case of Crowley's reception, the Book of the Law, upon his split from the Golden Dawn. Jones' revelations of the eons of Matt and Parsons received Parsons' Book of Babylon, upon their respective splits from Crowley and the OTO, Crowleyan from the and his original order. Quinn was reception of the Book of Coming Forth by Night upon his split from Anton LaVey, the Book of the Coming Forth by, and the Church of Satan. And as I said before, those guys aren't the Church of Satan, and those guys, they're not actually actual occultists. They're atheists who basically have fun with religious themes and stuff like that. I'm not so sure they're really into any of this like that. From what I know, they pretty much hate anything that even smacks of this stuff. Many of these documents but that doesn't mean occultism isn't real either. documents were generated by individuals exploring the systems left by Dee and Kelly. Parsons' particular interest, as like Dee, straddled the cultural discourse in that mainstream science working by day. His work helped help NASA create the rockets that would put man on the moon in experimental rocketry at night as a practicing magician and leader of the California branch of Crowley's Order Tempora Orientis. Parsons founded NASA's Jet Propulsion Labs, is responsible for the solid-state rocket fuel that got the United States to the moon. As instrumental in the push into space, is responsible for the solid-state rocket fuel. Yeah. And the push into space exploration in his day as D was for the push towards the colonization of the New World and his, it was responsible for that, huh? And as Parsons experimented extensively with Dee's Enochian system. Well, that is interesting. What do you think about this, folks? Please leave me a few chats and your ideas on all of this. What do you think about John Dee here? We'll also be looking at other articles about him as well, at least if I get to them. This is a big one here. But we're getting a good idea on who John Dee is. All right. Whose system and stuff, Pasadena system, and the Mojave Desert claiming to, basically they're talking about the, the Babylon working. I think that's what with Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons perform. This is them talking about the Babylon working. At least that's what I think it's called. Where they basically said people think that basically he summoned aliens to Earth. And they might not be aliens if you're using magic. They might have been demons, but you get the idea that these two guys, from what he's talking about here, basically says that that with them doing magical spells in the Mojave Desert, basically is the Babylon working, basically says they might have summoned aliens or demons or spiritual beings to Earth. And that's why we see UFOs. Claiming to have incarnated Enochian elemental form of an artist, Marjorie Cameron, later a major figure in the California counterculture, should also be noticed that the discovery of received texts or temas by specialized adepts called Turtons has been a tradition of continual revelation in Tibetan Buddhism since the 8th century. Because of their high social value in occult circles, their perceived necessity for full individualism, these received documents are problematic. For full individualization, these received documents are problematic. The generation of received documents, received text is so wrapped up in the psychological transference and recapitulated lessons that occurs in the teacher-student relationship that claims of divine or extraterrestrial providence begin to look muddied at best. For Crowley, however, basically a mathematically enciphered book of the law and other channeled documents are perhaps the most convincing work of this genre. Such communication, whether real or imagined, are the entire point of occult practice. Crowley remarked near the end of his life, spent immersed in the study of the Hebrew and G's Enochian book magic. That observation of the universe convinces me that there are beings of intelligence and power of a far higher quality than anything we have perceived or conceive as human. That they are not necessarily based on the cerebral and nervous structure that we know, and that the one and only chance of mankind to advance as a whole is for individuals make contact with such beings. Whether such contact is valid is another question, as is whether the contacts experienced by D. Kelly and others, persons, etc., are valid as anything other than records of altered states of consciousness or even cult-induced sociopathology. These claims of contact experiences not through physical alien abductions of spirit mediumship, but via higher mathematics, language have, to my knowledge, never been studied as an overarching genre through an assessment of such documents in terms of their transformative cultural impact, rather than interdimensional vitality. Could open up a much needed discussion of the aspect of psychohistory. On psychohistory, huh? These questions of contact haunted Dee in life and dogged him in death because he explored this dangerous liminal territory between objective and subjective magic. Well, between science and magic. Dee's name was defaced and scratched from the record by the religious and scientific reformers that followed him because operative magic holds the unique position of offending the watchdogs of both religion and science, and on the other hand, being largely incomprehensible to anybody who does not speak the twilight language of occult theory and symbolism. It of necessity occupies a place of very Marlonia in history. Yeah. In his life, Dee stood at the crossroads between magic and science, between the medieval and the modern, Parsiism and Catholicism, and finally between terrestrial and celestial worlds themselves. This is the inscrutable, this work of the magus, whose work may move cultures wholesale, even if the individuals themselves is forgotten. Dee's many biographers have largely sought to either focus on Dee's scientific and political work or on the angelic conversations between themselves. I will here provide introductory overview of Dee's complex life and into Bob Rogers' Little Miss Sunburn. John Dee was the original 007 Turbo. Yeah, that's what they say in other articles, that he was actually a spy. He could have been as well, folks. Bob Rogers, 2 balls and a cane. Yep, that's right. I will provide an introductory overview of Dee's complex life and intellectual achievements, and tentatively portray his work as a coherent whole, suggesting that they are different phases of a total project, nothing short of the great work that of advancing the evolution of humanity. How much more of this is there of this? Oh, that's all there is, huh? Okay. This book begins as a short article for the website Bong, researching my subject. However, I became enthralled, giddy, and obsessive the more I immersed myself in his world and thinking quickly, finding my research expanding outside the bounds of an article. The man I discovered was as much more than the character painted by Crowley. Character, huh? Other cultural sources. Here was a man who was satisfied with nothing less than understanding the limits of the cosmos itself, and who grounded his knowledge into the physical world, who catalyzed both the age of imperialism and the age of reason. In seeking to more fully understand John Dee, I found myself coming to radically new and overarching understanding of not just Himmertism, but ours is also the very architecture of history and the world around me. Dee's vision, indescribably broad, his ambition frustrating, his ambition. But when you are able to ascend to at least to the heights from which he saw the world, the overall vision became indescribably simple. I guess so. Dee's England was a country of high adventure, high magic, high seas exploration and piracy, Shakespearean high culture. Through desperately poor Elizabeth's England is etched into the imagination of the world as, Hostian era. It has been my privilege to spend this time with John Dee, Elizabeth, and their world. I am equally indebted to the many fine recent biographers of Dee, in particular those of Deborah Harkins, and to the work of Dee's original papers done by... Okay. I think that's about it there. We got that. We know who John Dee is, but let's look at some weird articles about John Dee now. Let me look at over here instead of different articles we can look at about him. Let me go over here. I guess I can go back over here. Let's see. Try this. See what happens if I do this real quick. Well, let's see. We can look at Loch Ness Magic and pair of legendary characters Edward Kelly and John Dee. The strange story of John Dee's magic angel crystal. Okay. don't see too much over there. I guess we'll start with the strange case of John Dee's magic angel crystal, I suppose, or we can look at John Dee's obsidian spirit mirror. Definitely came from the Aztecs. Let's look at that first. All right. Historians often point to the 16th century English mathematician and astronomer John Dee is considered by many to have originated the term British Empire term. Fans of the occult would rather on Dee's time as court astronomer and advisor of Elizabeth I, practitioner of dark magic and owner of an obsidian spirit mirror, which he claimed allowed him to communicate with ghosts and angels. Obsidian is a volcanic glass which should make it easy to trace to its site of origin, but Dee's mysterious obsidian mirror defied analysis until now. In 1558, he became a scientific advisor and astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I. Between 1550 and 1570, he advised on English voyages of discovery to the New World and showed great interest in accounts of his initial Spanish encounters in the region. Sherman, 2006, by 1580s, he had become increasingly involved with the supernatural and took various scryers or mediums to communicate with spirits through the use of mirrors or crystals, most notably Edward Kelly into the service as intermediaries between himself and the angels. It is for this period of his life that he is best known in the public imagination. It was probably also the time that the obsidian mirror discussed here. Okay, that's interesting. Discussed here, huh? So, what do you think about John Dee here, folks? You have any ideas about him? Do you think he actually was a magician? Do you think he basically seems to have done a great many things? And we're learning about him stuff. Now we're talking about various articles and various stuff about him and stuff. The various weird things that he's done, basically, these things that were basically subscribed to him. I mean, do you think there's anything else to say here? Do you think any of these objects actually are magical? Or do you think he was putting people on? I mean, maybe he had a bit of I think he was more or less truthful, but I wouldn't be surprised as others have pointed out that he was a spy for Elizabeth I, or at least thought of as a spy. That could be very well true as well. Let's get back to this article. Is for his period of life that he is best known in the public imagination. It was probably also the time that the obsidian mirror discussed here came to the fore. Here's John Dee again. Outlined in a new study published in the Journal of Antiquity, researchers from the University of Manchester were given access to John Dee's spirit mirror by the British Museum, and much is known about Dee's usage of it. Various owners of the obsidian mirror, from his death to it arriving in the museum, little was known of how Dee obtained it. Through his interest in the New World and the artifacts brought back from there led to some to suspect it came from one of its volcanic regions. However, there were no records of its origin, nor how Dee took ownership of it. In fact, Dee himself had never wrote about the speculum about it. It was first linked to him by English writer Horace Walpole, who wrote it was the black stone within which Dr. Dee used to call his spirits. Here's a photo of the mirror here. Let's take a look at it. Is that it? Okay, not bad. Interesting. Yeah, I see various looks at it. Okay, it's interesting. Dee claimed that a purple crystal he possessed was given to him by the Archangel Uriel. He also got with instructions for making a philosopher's stone, so some people suspected. So he's also an alchemist, huh? The obsidian mirror, polished on both sides and nearly perfectly circular at 7.2 inches, 18.5 centimeters diameter, and 0.5 inches, 13 millimeters thick, was similarly obtained. Ignoring that option, the researchers used a portable X-ray fluorescence instrument to compare its chemical fingerprints, ratios of iron, titanium, and rubidium. With ratios and samples of obsidian mined from different parts of Mexico, Dee's mirror was a close match for samples from Puchichia. Sorry if I misspelled that name. a region in down south, and that was under Aztec control and a major source of the known obsidian resources for the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs were believed to wear obsidian mirrors as symbols of promotion and power, which made them attractive to the European invaders who looted their treasures and brought them back to Europe, where one in particular may have been traded until ending up in the occultist possession of John Dee. Our geochemical analysis allows us to demonstrate that all the obsidian mirrors in the British Museum, their Mexican origin. John Dee's mirror and a second mirror are similar in form and are both made of obsidian from the Pachuca source, which may prove to be the typical of this type of artifact. John Dee's connection has been particularly charismatic, making his mirror and others like it representative in the modern world of the Aztecs, of Elizabethan Renaissance and of European occult beliefs, and constant cycle of apparition and repurposing. This new research proves the connection between John Dee, spirit mirror, and the man himself. It proves that the mirror was made by Aztec artists in the Pachuco region, but perhaps the greatest and saddest discovery of his research is that while the Europeans in the New World were conquering and pillaging and advancing creative civilization, the intent of, taking as much as they could and advanced in cultural, basically left it, basically there were afterward ruins. It shows that the product of the same civilization were being admired and given supernatural powers by the old world. It destroyed the makers. It's too bad Dee's spirit mirror couldn't deliver that message to him. Couldn't deliver that message to him. All right, so interesting there. They were destroying them and stuff like that. So you say. Oh, we can also look at that article. Let's maybe look at, John Dee's fascination with the occult driven by espionage? Might have to look at that as well. As I said, Bob Rogers brought it up. I kind of want to look at this article first. Let's see how long it is. Okay, we got a few minutes here. See how long this article is. Maybe not that much longer. I think I can boot it out. A very mysterious figure in history. Well, I looked at this and stuff like that. Maybe I should look at the other article first because I don't have that much longer in here. Was John Dee's fascination with this is where he's basically a spy, folks. Let's look at this. Throughout the middle of 1500s, renowned scientist and philosopher John Dee became what many would recognize as the first of the famous British spies, whilst working on as an educator in the fields of astronomy and mathematics, among other areas of expertise. Dee famously had been an advisor to Queen Elizabeth during his lifetime, occasionally working to secretly collect and transfer information to her as a personal liaison, foreshadowing things to come. It had even been the insignia of Queen Elizabeth's nickname for G. She referred to him as Eyes, likely inspired the later codename 007 that would appear in Ian Fleming's Bond novels. Well, James Bond novels. Let's say they're Bond novels. Despite his scientific prowess and work as a statesman, John Dee has remained a controversial historical figure due to his occult leanings. Dee, after all, had inspired to study the fields of science in equal measure to that by magic and hypnotism, all during an era in which the divide between the two was growing to never more divided. Right. Because of his indistinguishable focus between desperate fields of study, many scholars looking back on Dee's life and work consider him a troubling and perhaps also troubled figure. Troubling because he didn't basically ascribe to just science or magic. Basically, they couldn't put him in one category because they're not that imaginative. While obviously one of the great minds of his era, he had similarly also appeared to be at times rather cruelist dupe. A cruelist dupe? Etching that depicts John Dee, Edward Kelly conjuring a spirit by magical means. Dee's infamous partnership with occult seer Edward Kelly, for instance, would produce the Enochian scripts, of which Dee is perhaps most famous through. At times this came with a great personal struggle, loss on Dee's part. Kelly, for instance, wishing to rid himself of such boring pursuits with the passing of the time, would go to great extremes with hope of repelling Dee from any further interest in such collaborations, and one notable as Kelly even advised Dee that the angels they communicated with had advised that the two men must share their wives rather than rejecting the idea, and Kelly, as intended, Dee begrudgingly agreed to the arrangement, revealing his apparent utter trust for Kelly's divine abilities, which, as history has since shown, were probably little more than acts of opportunistic charlatan. Maybe. I think I've heard about that, yeah. The prolonged fascination that Dee maintained for such occult studies have remained a dark mark in the minds of many modern scholars. That's because they're unimaginative. And again, they're set in their ways, just as the people who religious zealots are set in their ways. But then again, you can see something like with John Dee doesn't make it easy either with his own, what he's done as well, as you can see. Who cannot accept how such faith and fascination in the realm of magic might have complemented a learned man like Dee in any manner. Yet there is perhaps another less often observed possibility pertaining to Dee, which some scholars suggest as an underlying reason for his devotion to magical studies. If true, would suggest far less about his interest in the occult, instead having everything to do with his operations as a spy for the Queen. Basically, they're trying to paint him in a new light, saying that he was a spy, so don't basically look at any of the weird stuff he did. That doesn't matter. He was a spy, so it's cool. He was a wizard, after all. He was a wizard, and he was a spy, so don't forget that. Around the same period, Dee had been enthralled with his magical studies. Sir Francis Wilson had served his tenure as Queen Elizabeth's Secretary of State. Has been speculated by some historians that Dee and Walsingham, and with Dee's role as a spy and advisor to Elizabeth at the time, may indeed have been involved in British espionage work while he was visiting Prague. This is where his angelic collaborations with Kelly had taken place. Given this set of circumstances, the angelic revelations that are focused on the creations of a secret language interpreted differently from having been an obsessive occult interest. The Enochian scripts may in fact have been representative of a coded language which Dee might have used to communicate secretly with Wishingham, who remained in England at the same time and stuff. Here's the alphabet, huh? Rather, the language itself, rather than having been divinely inspired by Kelly's alleged observations through his shrew stone of an angel Dee, as an angel Dee recognizes Medimi. Oh, great. Could had simpler origins. The earlier work of German cryptographer Johannes Termerius may even have served as the inspiration for these scripts. However, there are other possible implications that have been resulted from this odd tidbit in the Annuals of Secret History. Annuals of History. Suggested by occult scholars Pet Lavendra, the entire basis of the famous occult order known as the Golden Dawn may well have had its origins in espionage work. It is well known, of course, that Dee's work would have go on to inspire the likes of MacGregor Matthews, well as William Westcott, founder of the Golden Dawn that emerged in part from the earlier Masonic traditions that influenced these men. Later, Aleister Crowley would similarly borrow from the Enochian scripts of Dee, the latter, though, having expressed a certain disdain for Dee scripts, ascribing the greater importance to the manipulative Kelly. We know, of course, that Kelly would go on to practice the magical arts well beyond his years with Dee, though none of this would end well for him. Kelly, after making the claim that he possessed knowledge in how to alchemically produce gold, would become essentially imprisoned by Emperor Rudolf II at Krvok Castle near Prague. None of this, of course, might remove Kelly from having been complicit with Dee's espionage operations, had he in fact been aware of them. During his, cooperative years. It would indeed be, during his. It would indeed be interesting if Dee's involvement in occult workings while in Prague might have had far less to do with the pursuit of scientific, you're saying that again, that many modern scholars attribute to him. In fact, due to his known activities as an Elizabethan spy, it may well be the case that Dee was up to more than, well, anyone really knows. Yeah, as you can see here, Dee might well have been a spy. A very good spy, too. And it leaves you wondering how much of him was magic, how much of it was just him being who he is. John Dee is he is an interesting character, is he not, folks? You learned so much about him this show. We learned about his life and stuff like that, what he did. We learned of various other things as well. So he had a very tough life as well. And he seems to have there's been far more to this man than anyone can really write down. But we've had a great live stream, and we looked through this, and we learned quite a bit about him. So I'm quite happy with this and all that. But really, what could it really mean? I mean, was John Dee a wizard? Was he actually a spy? What was the man actually? We don't know. We know that that other men covered his wife. And he seemingly went along with that for his own reasons, which made him look like a moron. But maybe he was playing up that part to basically be a spy. If everyone thought he was a moron, he'd have free wit to do as he wishes and basically do his spy work in peace. That could also be the case. Either way, it's all highly interesting to look through all this stuff. And we learned quite a bit about John Dee tonight. And a great live stream as well. I suppose I could do one more video on John Dee. Read through this article right here real quick. Just get this done. A very mysterious figure in history, the man known as John Dee, born in the year 1527, the Anglo Welsh figure, would go on to become a prominent mathematician, astronomer, doctor, astrologer, teacher, occultist, and alchemist. During the course of his rather strange life, he is perhaps most known for being an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, where he stirred the capacity of guiding her in astrological and scientific matters as well as on political business. He was very heavily into advocating for the founding of the English colonies in the New World, and he is in fact credited with coining the term British Empire, making him a very prominent historical figure indeed. He is also known for having been deep into the realm of the occult and supernatural, engaging in realms of the occult and supernatural, engaging in alchemy, skying, talking to real angels, and collecting some rather bizarre mystical artifacts. One of these was a mysterious crystal that purportedly held all manner of the supernatural powers, including the ability to communicate with actual angels. It must also be addressed that Dee was understood that Dee was no nutcase or quack. He was a highly respected scientist, mathematician, navigator, and astronomer in his time, collecting one of England's biggest libraries during his life, yet his interests often varied off into the decidedly more fringe. He was very into astrology, Hermetic philosophy, magic, alchemy. Here again, we have these guys basically decrying the fact that he was a wizard, even though he was a scientist, almost saying that, no, he should have just been a scientist, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, very strange. Almost as if they basically don't want you to look into the fact that he was a wizard and stuff like that. Interests often varied into decidedly more fringe. He was also very into astrology, Hermetic philosophy, magic, alchemy, particular divination, utilizing various objects such as crystals and mirrors. He was interested in transcending what we see as the physical world, writing numerous tomes on such matters and collecting mystical items. He also claims to have frequently spoken with spirits and angels. One of Dee's favorite tools for reacting to the world beyond the veil of our reality was the use of various crystals and mirrors in order to pursue the art of skying or divining the future and messages from beyond through looking into these reflective surfaces for signs and images. In the 16th century, the use of crystalmancy, or using crystals and cryptomancy using mirrors were well-established methods of scrying. Indeed, the practice of using reflective surfaces to conjure up magic had been going on for centuries before Dee had ever come along. Dee's scrying mirror itself is a black glass mirror stored in a shark skin case, yet rather than use it to find lost objects or treasure, as so many want to do at the time, Dee sought to reach out to summon spirits and communicate with actual angels, with whom he would allegedly discuss all manner of topics, ranging from politics to the realms of the esoteric. It was during one such supposed exchange with an angel that he would allegedly come into his most prized possession. In the year 1582, Dee claimed that he had been using his personal scrying mirror when he was contacted by the angel Uriel. After an exchange, the angel purportedly gifted him with a large purple crystal, which was claimed to hold all manner of powers, from communicating with angels to the powers to read the future or heal any element. It was very purportedly imbued with a secret of making the legendary Philosopher's Stone, making quite an important artifact to say the least. In appearance, it was clear-cut purple crystal attached to a chain and ring, very pretty, but hiding its grand purpose and powers behind the facade of what we basically a trinket. Though this crystal, Dee would claim to be in regular contact with angels, even saying that they had written several books through him using it. Dee and his colleague Edward Kelly even claimed that they were taught the language of angels through it called Enochian. One message that Dee apparently received through the crystal from the angel Raphael was, "John Dee, I am Raphael, one of the blessed and elect angels of the Almighty. In all his will and his good pleasure he hath commanded me to appear here at the time to set forth the will and pleasure of the Almighty God. So if thou wilt do as God shall command thee by this message, thou shalt have all these messages, promises, and wisdom, both for the Philosopher's Stone, the book of Dr. St. Dustin, the secret wisdom, the jewel was delivered out, thou knowest in what manner it is plainly known unto thee." Here's what it looked like, huh? The crystal would eventually fall into possession of Dee's son, Arthur Dee. Well, ended up as passing on to his physician, Nicholas Culfer, who also happened to be an alchemist. Culpeper would allegedly use the crystal to cure all manner of illnesses and ailments during his career, and passed it on when he claimed that a demonic entity had once materialized from it to menace him. The crystal would then pass through a succession of owners, including Lady Betty Jermyn, Duke of Argyll, and later to Horace Walpole, before coming into the possession of the Wallace Historical Medical Museum, now the Wellcome Trust, 1936, where it remains. There have since been many replicas and fake produced by Dee's mysterious crystal. We are left to wonder just how many any of this tale is true. What was this item, and did it do all that he said it could? Was Dee really in contact with angels? What about the others? Claimed that the crystal had mysterious powers. Probably never know, and certainly serves to add another layer to the mystery of the historical figure. All right. That's the end of this video, folks. But yeah, what do you think about John Dee? We talked about him. We learned a bit about him now. We learned quite a bit about him now. And that's what. So what do you think? Do you think it's real? Think it's, yeah. What about it? I mean, what are your ideas? I'd love to hear your ideas on it. But please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics, They're Bad For You, okay? The there is misspelled. So it's Read Comics, They're Bad For You. Make sure, go to my YouTube channel and go to past live streams if you want to watch this stream again. Because YouTube buries my videos, but if you go to past live streams, you can watch this video right off the bat. As well as go to my Twitter page at 777 megachris1. There's a link on the first tweet. All right. What else to say? Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that hit that like button. Okay, so more people can see my content and use my graphic novel Scumdogs. My graphic novel Scumdogs comes out all the sooner. Yeah, it comes out all the sooner. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to hit the part of the bell that will make sure to hit the part of the bell that will give you all future notifications. And please go share this video out on Twitter and Facebook. Also, remember, folks, go and subscribe to the YouTube channels Stitched Together Pics, Robot Co-op, and Creepy Little Book. They are great channels that deserve far more subscribers. Remember, folks, I'll be back again tomorrow around, 5 or 6 9, 10, or 11 o'clock for another live stream. So be sure to come back again then. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel.